Hello and welcome to Razz Reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing X-Men Apocalypse, which is the 6th installment in the X-Men series. Not counting the other spin-offs, some of which are awesome, and others, not so much. So, X-Men Apocalypse, is it good? Is it shit? Nobody seems to know. Critics don't seem to have a consensus on whether or not this film is good. I mean, it's generally negative reviews, but it's kind of a mixed bag. This movie takes place in the 80s and it deals with the consequences of the events of Days of Future Past, like Mystique, for example, being a hero now. Xavier now has his school for the gifted and he's going full force on recruiting all the X-Men that we know. Magneto is somewhere far away from the limelight, obviously wanted for trying to kill the president, and the story just picks up from there. I generally thought it was an okay film. I didn't think it was the most amazing installment. It's definitely not better than Days of Future Past. It's somewhere in the middle for me if I have to rank it. Look, if you're a fan of the X-Men movies and you were able to tolerate the crap fest that they have put out before, you will enjoy this film because a crap fest it is not. It is an okay film. So it introduces a bunch of new characters or reboots old characters that we've known before, and it also brings back characters that we liked in previous films like Quicksilver, which is awesome in this movie, just as awesome as he was in the last one. So Apocalypse rises after thousands of years of being buried in Egypt, and he recruits a bunch of horsemen, the Four Horsemen, which again, very similar to his character in the comics, and now he's about to destroy humanity and the X-Men have to stop him. Pretty standard X-Men storyline stuff. At the end of Days of Future Past, when, spoiler alert, we saw In Sabah Nur or Apocalypse being teased, I was very excited because I thought that they're gonna do Age of Apocalypse. I didn't think that we're gonna get the Age of Apocalypse that we've seen in the comics. And then again, Apocalypse is a very complex character with a really complex origin that I'm not gonna go into right now, but again, my expectations were pretty low on how Apocalypse is going to be portrayed on screen. Generally, I liked Apocalypse. I mean, he wasn't the most amazing villain I've ever seen, but at the same time, he was pretty serviceable. I like Oscar Isaac, and I liked his performance here. I didn't mind the way that Apocalypse looked. I mean, he always looked kind of ridiculous, no? It's kind of like The Thing in bluish drag. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Now it's time to count the top 3 things I liked about this movie. Number 3, opening sequence. I really liked the opening sequence for this movie. I mean, I went into this movie, fearing the negative reviews, thought that this movie's not gonna be nice. However, when I sat down and the movie started, that opening sequence reeled me in. It was really captivating and really, really cool. I especially liked the music and the score of that opening sequence because it gave you a sense of awe and epicness, and it just made the movie hit the ground running, and it started on a very high note. Number 2 is the rebooted X-Men characters. Like I said, in this movie they reboot a bunch of characters that we've seen before, most notably Cyclops or Scott Summers, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler. Now these 3, some of them were treated really well in previous installments, some not so much.
Scott?
So in this movie, the filmmakers have kind of a do-over with these characters, especially because Days of Future Past kind of cancelled out that timeline, so whatever happened in the first 3 X-Men movies no longer exists, that time no longer exists. So now we get to see these characters from scratch, which is a really, really nice clean slate to have. Jean Grey is now played by Sophie Turner, who I will always recognize as Sansa Stark, no matter what she says. I really enjoyed her on screen. I bought into that character, I was invested, and I thought she did a great job as Jean Grey and a very nice setup for her for the next films, and I can't wait to see more of her. Scott Summers or Cyclops generally did not get a nice treatment in all the previous films. They just made him this third wheel love triangle thingy between Wolverine and Jean Grey. Cyclops in the comics actually leads the X-Men a lot of times. He's a pretty badass guy and, happens to be the father of fucking Cable, which is fucking awesome. So he's an awesome character, so I don't understand why they just really, really destroyed him in the films. However, now we get a new Scott Summers, and I must say I really enjoyed him. I still need to see more to really identify whether or not I'm gonna like Cyclops or whether or not he does the comic book character justice, but it is definitely a step in the right direction, so I really enjoyed him on here. The number 1 thing I liked about X-Men Apocalypse was all the Magneto scenes. I love Magneto and I love Michael Fassbender's interpretation of him, and this movie is no exception. He does a great job at playing this character. He is menacing and dark and strong, yet you feel compassion for him, you understand his plight, and you always sympathize with him. And in this movie he has some tough scenes, some emotional crap happens to this guy, and I was captivated every time that Magneto was on the screen, and I loved him in this movie. Now it's time for the top 3 things I did not like about X-Men Apocalypse. Number 3, plot resolution. I really enjoyed the first and the second act of this film, and I was not a big fan of the third act. The resolution of the film did not work for me, and I think it's partly why it got so many negative and mixed reviews, because it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. Earlier I was talking about how much I loved Magneto and how much I loved his scenes, but I did not love his scenes towards the end of the film, and I don't want to spoil anything, but his resolution and the resolution for Apocalypse and his plans and the final battle did not really work for me. I mean, it definitely had some highlights, there were some really cool moments, but it sometimes also fell a little flat, and I felt there was like a sense of repetition of certain things we've seen earlier in the movie, so there was a lot of things that could have been different, that could have had more of an impact, but unfortunately it did not hit the mark. I'm having this kind of fatigue with all superhero movies, which is I'm really tired of seeing cities get destroyed. I feel nothing. Like bridges are being wrecked and cars are flying, and I'm sure a lot of people are dying, but these movies, they just throw these random destruction scenes in our face so much that now I don't feel anything. I don't feel the stakes. I'm just sitting there, look, everything's getting destroyed. It no longer has an emotional impact, which is a real problem, really, and it's definitely a problem in this movie. Number 2, the Four Horsemen. Apocalypse enlists 4 mutants to help him out every time, and he calls them the Four Horsemen. It's a biblical thing, woohoo, it's pretty cool. However, in this movie, the Four Horsemen really didn't work for me. So I didn't buy into why these specific 4 mutants were the Four Horsemen, because I thought that Apocalypse is gonna go out and look for the strongest, most devastating X-Men out there, give them powers, and then they could be his posse, right? But in the movie, not all 4 mutants he picks are actually that strong. I mean, you have Archangel, who has always been one of the Four Horsemen, even in the comics. I get it. Who cares? I mean, you don't always have to stick to the original material. You have to make the movie work. You have to convince me while I'm watching why this guy is such a badass and why Apocalypse would pick him out of the billions of mutants that exist. So I didn't buy into it, and I didn't really buy into why some of them actually became horsemen. Like, what is their motivation? Why would they follow this man who's about to reap destruction on everybody? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, some of them he uses their emotional vulnerability at the time, and it works really well, and some of them it's just, come be a horseman, sure, let's go. It makes no sense really, so I really didn't like it. And the top thing I didn't like about X-Men Apocalypse was Mystique. Now, I love Jennifer Lawrence, and I think she's done an amazing job in a lot of movies, but in this particular film, it was not her best. I did not buy her performance. I felt that she was completely phoning it in. She wasn't into it, and honestly, I'm really tired of Jennifer Lawrence being shoved in my face. Mystique is all about being mutant and being proud, and that's what made her character so cool, is that she can be anybody, she can be anything, yet she chooses all the time to be blue, to be who she is, and that is her strength as a character and what makes her so awesome. So when she's walking around the whole time looking like Jennifer Lawrence just because it's Jennifer Lawrence and just because we need to make money from the film, really does take away from the character and what makes her so great. And also, why the hell is she leading the X-Men? Why the hell is she there? She's supposed to be a villain. Okay, the timeline changed with Days of Future Past. I get that. But she should still be looking out for herself. She should still be out there doing things. No, she's just walking around with the new X-Men. She's half recruiting them, half she doesn't want to be there. Like, even why she's there doesn't make any sense. Even she doesn't know why she's there. She's sitting there brooding. She's not happy she's there. I'm not happy she's there. Get her out of there, please. So now it's time for me to tell you whether you should watch this movie, and if you do, should you watch it in the cinema or at home on whatever platform you may choose. If you are a fan of the X-Men movies, and if you are a fan of the X-Men comics, you should definitely go to the cinema and watch this movie. Because it's a fun, entertaining movie, and it has all the characters you like. And if you happen to not like it, then you can actually have some information for when you argue with your friends and tell them that they're wrong. However, if you're not a massive fan, I say wait till it's out on DVD, or if it's playing on a TV channel, then you can check it out. I mean, it's an okay film, it could be enjoyable to a lot of people who like X-Men, but it had a lot of potential and I didn't think that it reached that full potential. So my final score for X-Men Apocalypse, it was still a positive experience for me. So, have you seen X-Men Apocalypse? Feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos to come your way. Also, please let me know your suggestions for what movies you would like me to review. See ya!